morning, welcome to the Morning Momentum this Wednesday. I am your host, Alfonsoh Ouma. Let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the papers this morning. We start with the Standard newspaper. The battle within. In its formative days, President Ruto's UDA vision was for a super party. With 2022 poll realities dawning, he reluctantly allowed an alliance with smaller parties. Now the head of state finds himself growing stronger politically, but also fighting fires over certain decisions and ambitious goals. That story is beefed up for you on page 4. National news, ODM MPs score a first win over party expulsion. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. Also, 13 suspects in 1 billion fake gold scam in court. That story is beefed up for you on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Also, Ruto 1 year later, how he compares with Uhuru Kibaki. That story is beefed up for you on page 2 and page 3. Sports news, drug test, Paul Pogba suspended. That story is beefed up for you on page 32. Let's take a look at page 2 of the Standard newspaper this morning. Ruto's scorecard as compared to Kibaki, Uhuru a year into the job. Now, Ruto marks 1 year in office as Kenyans compare styles of 3 presidents. An opinion survey shows majority feeling country headed in wrong direction. That story is beefed up for you on page 2 and page 3 of the Standard this morning. On page 4, inside the fight for power in Kenya Kwanza. Mixed fortunes for President Ruto as he marks 1 year in office. He is fighting fires over some decisions and heft promises. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 of the Standard this morning. Let's take a look at page 6. Suspects in 1 billion fake gold heist freed on bail as probe continues. Magistrates rules there's no compelling reasons to detain them, but 2 foreigners to stay in custody for 2 more days. That story is beefed up for you on page 6. On page 7, court holds 66 Mackenzie followers for more 30 days to allow probe. Officer says it is a tall order questioning rescues, and magistrate tells victims to speak up on the issue. That story is beefed up for you on page 7 of the Standard this morning. We take a look at page 8. Ruto to unveil 3rd generation Maisha digital identity cards. The rollout will include new national identity card applicants, newborns, and those replacing lost identity cards. Government to allocate 1 billion to complete the project, which involves issuing 3 million identity cards annually. That story is beefed up for you on page 8 of the Standard this morning. On page 10, ODM rebel MPs score win as panel stops their expulsion. The 5 legislators were kicked out by the party last week. They insist they have not been accorded a fair disciplinary hearing. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. On page 11, the transformation of NCPB is driven by commitment to efficient service delivery. That story is beefed up for you on page 11. Let's take a look at expert opinion on the Standard this morning. Bungoma country great standing with ugly Nakitumba Ruto. That story is beefed up for you on page 12. On page 13, do you support state's new directive to NGOs? Nicholas Mwanambai, events planner, says yes, let them support bottom up. On the contrary, Gloria Nzembi, sales executive, says government should leave NGOs alone. That story is beefed up for you on page 13. Let's take a look at the Standard Enterprise. New proposal to level field in state tenders. That story is beefed up for you on the article on page 4 and page 5. Let's move on to some other news, and that is business news this morning. Kenya Power sets eyes on electric fleet, but fuel hangover lingers. Farm invites tenders to supply of fossil fuel powered as well as electric vehicles and motorcycles. Says move to green transport will increase electricity sales and reduce operational costs. That story is beefed up for you on page 17 of the Standard this morning. Let's take a look at international news. 2,000 dead and 10,000 missing in Libya. Catastrophic flooding. As many as 6,000 people are missing from the eastern city of Derna alone. There are fears that aid efforts may be hampered by political fractures in the country. That story is beefed up for you in page 19. Southern Africa. Zimbabwe leader names son as minister. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa has been accused of nepotism after appointing his son as one of a new set of ministers following his controversial re-election last month. That story is beefed up for you on page 19. Let's move on to page 20. Why Egypt is worried about Ethiopia's dam. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, more than a mile long and 145 meters high. The reservoir behind 615.3 billion shillings dam has a surface area the size of Greater London. That story is beefed up for you on page 20 of the Standard this morning. Let's take a look at sports news inside the Standard this morning, and the top story right here is athletics. Sorry, it's rugby. Onyala returns as Shujaa heads for Olympic qualifiers. Asati and Shiasi are among 6 players handed their maiden call-ups by Wambua. The continental showpiece in Harare will act as Olympic qualifiers. That story is beefed up for you on page 29. Matters football. Pumwani and Country Bus through to Court Bureau quarters. Pumwani FC, Ziwani All-Stars, Country Bus and Zimmerman FC are the first teams to qualify for the quarterfinals of the 46th edition of the famous Court Bureau football tournament. That story is beefed up for you on page 29. On page 30, Novak Djokovic keeps going beyond numbers. Serbian 36 became oldest player to win US Open title on Sunday and the first man to win all 4 majors at least 3 times. He has now cemented his claim as the greatest tennis player with 24 Grand Slam titles, which include 10 Australia Open titles. That story is beefed up for you on page 30. On page 31, it's 8 matches gone, another 40 to come. Italy believe they have what it takes to challenge All Blacks and France in their group. The opening match of the tournament set the bar high ahead of second group matches. That story is beefed up for you on page 31. On the cover page of the Standard this morning, South Sudan shock Harambee Stars in friendly tie at Kasarani. Stars brought back to earth after having beaten Qatar away in last friendly match. Kenya Police striker Okello scores the all-important goal for the visitors. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page of the Standard this morning. Let's take a quick break and then we come back with the top stories inside the Daily Nation.
Boxes that could reproduce sound were invented. Forget about history. Younib Music Studio is equipped with the latest technology and staffed with experienced sound engineers who will make your experience fun, engaging, groovy and fulfilling as your music dreams become a reality. We offer music recording, commercial adverts, schizo tunes, podcast and voiceovers. We are located in Syker along Kangondo Road, and you can also reach us on our social media platforms on Younib TV on Instagram and Younib Media on Facebook, or call us on 0719-144-144. Younib, ever the best.
Welcome back to the Morning Momentum. If you are just joining us, you are still rolling with the host with the most. My name is Alfonsoh Ouma. Let's take a look at the top stories inside the Daily Nation this morning. Ruto at 1. It's a bag of mixed fortunes for Kenya Kwanza as it marks 1 year in office. On this day last year, UDS William Ruto took the oath of office to become Kenya's 5th president. He had made many promises and made some more. Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi says the president has kept them and is continuing to. But for many Kenyans, the hard times are still here. That story is beefed up for you on page 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. Scorecard: Kenyans urged to accept short-term pain for long-term gain. That story is beefed up for you on those pages. What's up? Raila holds crisis meeting. Opposition leader Raila Odinga is set to make a major announcement on the going bipartisan talks amid growing claims that President William Ruto's camp is frustrating the negotiations. Mr. Odinga yesterday chaired a crisis meeting of the Azimio summit that lasted for more than 4 hours. That story is beefed up for you on page 7. Also, address our concerns or we go on strike, warn doctors. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page. Let's take a look at page 2 of the Standard this morning. Mudavadi: President Ruto made promises and he has kept them. President William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza administration turns 1 year today amid hard economic times. Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, the man in charge of coordination and supervision of ministries and state departments, outlines its key achievements in the period. In an exclusive interview with the Nation senior reporter Justus Ochieng, Mr. Mudavadi explains Kenya Kwanza's key milestones, promising that the government is focused on stabilizing the economy and will do all it takes to serve the people. That story is beefed up for you on page 2 and page 3. On page 4, poll: most Kenyans believe the country is on the wrong track. People in Nairobi, that is 61%, Western 68%, and Nyanza 67%, were most dissatisfied. Only 30% of Kenyans believe the country is on the right track, with 13% unsure. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 5, half of cabinet rated D on performance. A section of Kenyans who are not aware of what some of the cabinet secretaries have achieved. A new poll released by Infotrack has rated Interior CS Kindiki as the best performing in the government. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. On page 6, no respite for broke Kenyans amid soaring prices of goods. Sugar prices have gone up by 61.4%, beans by 27.9%, maize flour by 9.6%, and cooking oil at 18.5%. President Ruto has faced a arduous task fulfilling his pledge for cushioning citizens. That story is beefed up for you on page 6. At a glance, 6.7% is the proportion of the rise in the cost of living in the year to August. Let's take a look at page 7. Delays to make major announcement on bipartisan dialogue. The dialogue committee has not held discussions on any of the substantive agenda items. Azimio team says their Kenya Kwanza counterparts are dragging the talks. That story is beefed up for you on page 7. Let's take a look at page 8. I'm coming with a broom to clean up Central Bank of Kenya, says a nominee. The vetting committee will now retreat to write this report. His priority will be instituting a transparent governance structure, and that story is beefed up for you on page 8. Let's take a look at page 10. So near yet so far. No light at the end of Land Farms Tunnel. Board split barely a week after chairperson's election. Wangari claims two directors should be treated as hostile members. That story is beefed up for you on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's take a look at another top story here. Kenya-China agencies sign trade pact. And the Kenya Investment Authority and Kenya-China Chamber of Commerce and Industry have signed an agreement to promote investment in Kenya. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. Let's take a look at page 12. How US sex-pest wife took donors for a ride. Woman was detained while trying to flee Kenya and convicted for abuse of girls at home. Crime Doe was in 2021 convicted of sexual misconduct involving minors. You can catch up with that story on page 12 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's take a look at business news. Road repair costs up 2.1 million per kilometer on costly materials. Several agencies tasked with different sections and estimates project charges will rise from 3.9 million shillings to 6 million shillings in current fiscal year. That story is beefed up for you on page 24. Let's take a look at sports news inside the Daily Nation this morning. Stars brought back down to earth by unfancied South Sudan. For the first time in history, Kenya fall to their southern neighbors. That story is beefed up for you on page 31. Also exciting as Hati makes Shuja's Olympics team. Can he inspire Kenya Shujaa their third Olympic Games appearance? Well, that's a question open for discussion on page 31 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's take a look at page 32. Simon Kipkosgei, a pace setter, sticks to the script for results. The ultimate goal is to help elite runners achieve their desired times or break records, but the methods employed can differ. That story is beefed up for you on page 32 of the Standard of the Daily Nation. Sorry. Let's take a look at another top story about sports news. It's about time Kenyan athletes fully entered the climate space. Kenyan sportsmen and women can engage in athlete advocacy to tackle climate change issues. That story is beefed up for you on page 34. On page 35, seasoned Italian coach Gulinelli pegs Olympic dream on mighty Pharaohs. Today's final against Algeria has all the trappings of a thriller. Heartbroken Cameroon play Libya in bronze medal match. Kenya's Wafalme Stars wind up 9th. That story is beefed up for you on page 35 of the Daily Nation this morning. On the cover page, doctors threaten to strike if concerns are not addressed. Health CS says ministry will go through petition, then call for a dialogue. Union accuses governors of running down the health sector in the 10 years of devolution. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, contracts for medics hired under UHC to be terminated next year. The 8,500 health workers hired by the Ministry of Health 3 years ago and deployed to the counties under the Universal Health Coverage Program to deal with COVID-19 pandemic will be let go next year. 8,500 number of health workers who were employed in 2020 and deployed to counties to help deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. And with that story, we come to an end of today's Morning Momentum. Many thanks to all those who made this broadcast a success, the Chief Controller, Anifa, Kavira, and many thanks to you for choosing to stay with Younib TV. I have been your host, Alfonsoh Ouma. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Wednesday. Bye-bye.